The scope of HITRUST QA includes format, sufficiency, and consistency. Format ensures that all submissions follow the standardized structure expected in the HITRUST MyCSF platform, using proper control references, evidence attachments, and assessment phases. Sufficiency assesses whether each control has enough evidence to justify its score. Consistency examines whether similar controls are treated uniformly and whether supporting data aligns with the assessor's narrative. For example, if one control references quarterly reviews, but the evidence shows only a single occurrence, QA will note a sufficiency issue. By covering these dimensions, QA ensures that every certification represents not only accurate compliance, but also professional, reproducible assessment practice across the HITRUST ecosystem. Evidence standards within QA focus on authenticity and traceability. Authenticity ensures that evidence originates from legitimate, unaltered sources. Traceability means that reviewers can easily follow the chain from the control statement to the documented proof. Every screenshot, log, or report should clearly link to the system or policy it supports and be timestamped to fall within the assessment period. For example, access review logs must show both the reviewer's name and date to prove the process was executed as claimed. Redacted or renamed files without explanation can create uncertainty. QA reviewers expect transparency. Evidence should speak for itself without needing supplemental explanation. This reinforces trust in the submission and minimizes rework requests later in the process. Scoring checks and PRISMA sanity reviews verify that the maturity ratings applied by the assessor align with the documented evidence. PRISMA evaluates each control across policy, procedure, implementation, measurement, and management levels. QA ensures that the scoring logic is consistent and rational. For instance, a control rated at full maturity must show not only existence, but also measurement data demonstrating active management. If a control's evidence stops at implementation, the maximum achievable score should reflect that limitation. QA's role is not to second-guess the assessor's judgment, but to confirm that the ratings match objective reality. These scoring checks protect the overall credibility of HITRUST certifications and ensure that maturity claims are backed by verifiable proof. Sampling validation and population proofs demonstrate that testing was representative and statistically sound. In R2 assessments, sampling is central to verifying control performance over time. QA reviewers check that sample sizes were adequate and selected properly from defined populations. For example, if quarterly access reviews were tested, QA expects to see evidence from multiple quarters or departments, not a single instance. Population proofs, such as lists of total items or system inventories, show that samples were drawn from a complete and relevant set. Without this traceability, QA cannot confirm the fairness of the test. Well-documented sampling protects both the assessor and the organization, ensuring conclusions hold true beyond isolated examples. Narrative clarity and contradiction checks are another focal point of QA. The written explanations accompanying each control should clearly describe how the safeguard operates and how evidence supports the assigned score. Contradictions between sections, such as describing automated enforcement while providing manual screenshots, raise red flags. QA reviewers read across related controls to ensure language and logic align. They also verify that narratives explain any exceptions or limitations rather than leaving them implied. Good narratives tell a coherent story: what the control does, how it works, and how compliance is proven. Poorly written or inconsistent narratives are among the top causes of QA rework, even when underlying evidence is strong. Inheritance verification and provider artifacts confirm that shared responsibilities are accurately represented. When an organization inherits controls from a cloud or managed service provider, QA reviews whether that inheritance is properly declared and supported by current provider documentation. This might include SOC 2 reports, HITRUST certifications, or attestation letters. QA checks the validity period, scope alignment, and mapping to inherited controls. If the provider's proof does not cover the same time frame or system boundary, the inheritance claim may be rejected. Clarifying where inheritance stops and internal responsibility begins prevents both duplication and gaps. Accurate inheritance mapping demonstrates that the organization understands its role within the shared assurance model. Exceptions, waivers, and compensating controls must be documented with precision during QA review. These represent acknowledged deviations from the standard requirements and must show both risk awareness and mitigation steps. QA expects to see formal approval records and justifications explaining why the exception exists and how residual risk is managed. For example, if a legacy system cannot support multi-factor authentication, a compensating control such as network segmentation must be proven effective. Waivers without supporting rationale or duration limits are common QA findings. The goal is transparency. Exceptions are not failures, but they must be managed consciously and defensively to maintain the integrity of the certification. Common QA rejection categories often include inconsistent scoring, missing or illegible evidence, insufficient sampling, and contradictory narratives. Another frequent issue is outdated provider documentation or incomplete mapping of inherited controls. QA reviewers also flag control evidence that does not match the described process or timeframe. These issues can typically be prevented through disciplined internal QA before submission. Recognizing these categories allows teams to anticipate trouble spots and correct them early. When organizations understand what typically causes rejection, they can adjust documentation and oversight habits, turning QA from a reactive correction step into a predictable, manageable phase of certification. Rework loops are the structured cycles where QA findings are addressed, triaged, and resolved. Once QA identifies issues, the assessor and organization receive feedback detailing what must be fixed. Prioritization is key. Critical deficiencies are handled first to keep certification timelines intact. Effective rework involves prompt clarification, corrected evidence, and improved narratives. For instance, if QA questions a control sampling method, the team may supply a new dataset or sampling explanation. Turnaround speed depends on preparation and communication. Viewing rework as refinement rather than failure keeps morale high and momentum steady, ensuring the submission emerges stronger and more defensible after each iteration. Communication cadence during QA determines how smoothly issues are resolved. Regular updates between the assessor, organization, and HITRUST reviewers prevent misunderstandings and keep work synchronized. Weekly or bi-weekly check-ins can clarify findings, confirm corrections, and set expectations for next steps. Delays often occur when messages sit unanswered or when feedback is interpreted differently by each party. Establishing a clear communication rhythm, using shared tracking logs or collaboration tools, keeps everyone aligned and accountable. Effective cadence reduces downtime between review cycles, enabling faster approvals and fostering a cooperative tone throughout what can otherwise feel like a tense process. Preventing recurrence across certification cycles turns QA lessons into lasting process improvement. After each assessment, organizations should capture which findings or rework themes repeated and why. Perhaps evidence organization was inconsistent, or certain control owners lacked training on PRISMA scoring. By addressing these root causes, teams reduce QA friction in future submissions. Creating templates, checklists, and internal guidance based on prior QA experiences builds maturity over time. This reflective practice transforms QA from a reactive correction mechanism into a proactive quality management discipline that supports continual readiness and higher confidence in every certification cycle. Building in quality early is the most effective way to ensure a smooth certification outcome. QA should not be seen as an end-of-process hurdle, but as an embedded principle guiding every stage of preparation and assessment. When documentation is clear, evidence traceable, and scoring rational from the start, QA becomes a confirmation rather than a correction. This forward-thinking approach saves time, preserves momentum, and strengthens the trustworthiness of the final certification. In the end, success with HITRUST QA is less about passing review and more about demonstrating that quality is a cultural value integrated, repeatable, and visible in every control and every decision along the way.